I'd like to welcome those of you who are not here to our mini version of our lesson. Remember, because it's Friday, the class will be a little shorter anyway, but this lesson, both your academic notes time and the lesson itself, will focus on learning how to analyze images. For your academic notes, you're going to be taking quite a bit of notes today, so get those out. During this class, I use several authors to actually look at their work, and that'll be later on, mostly in second quarter. But because we're talking about photography today, or images, I decided to pick a photographer to learn what she does. And so I attached two short PBS videos to this slide. And the first one talks about Dorothea Lange's famous photograph, Migrant Mother, how that photograph became famous. And the second one talks about her work as a collective whole of capturing the images of the Great Depression. During both videos, record 5 things that you learn about how she tells a story, not through words, but through pictures. And you can use both videos to come up with those 5 things. So just label today's images, reading images, but then for this part, it's entitled Dorothea Lange. Here on this slide, I have some famous statements that she made as a photographer during her life. It connects really back to a concept that I've taught you several times already. Whenever we are reading, read it like we are writers. So how do we read a picture? We'll learn how to do that today, but we can still write about what we see in images and then write like a reader. So if you're writing about a picture, remember, especially if they don't have the picture nearby, an audience needs to understand a lot of context that's going on and content in your response. For the main part of class today, we're going to talk about the power of an image. I use this first slide to just illustrate a point that when you first look at the slide, you see one of 3 things. Most people will see 3 dots. Some will see a triangle because they put the 3 separate pieces together as one unit. Other people see what it is literally, electrons on a screen. So even though we're looking at the same thing, we're kind of pre-wired to see things differently. Here's an example of how society teaches us to see things a certain way. So as we've read maps throughout our lives, we usually see it from the Mercator's way. He was a cartographer in the late 1500s, and what he did is he created maps with North America on top, the Northern Hemisphere on top, and they were used to help people navigate throughout the world, or explorers navigate. And since that time, we've kind of figured out the world, but we continue to use his way of presenting landmass in a picture. Well, that's not the only way you can see landmass. Like if we were to go out into space and look back on Earth, depending on where we are, we probably are not going to see the North Pole on the top and the South Pole on the bottom. So this map is kind of an illustration of that. And one of the things that we've learned through someone just recreating a map from a different point of view is that the map that we normally use actually has a few places that are out. Because North is on the top, it will take a place like Greenland and make it it appears larger than what it really is. So in your academic notes, I'm going to be showing you quickly some different pictures, but I do want you to write down the 6 or 7 statements that I make about pictures. The first thing, if you'll notice, this part of your academic notes is tied into this concept, the age demanded an image. We live in a time period where photographs are instant, images are instant to us. And so sometimes we see just as much, if not more, photographs than we do actual text today. So why should we spend time in an English class learning how to analyze a photo? So here are some reasons. The first one is images are memorable. So you can take time and slow down, but I've included after that a couple of really famous pictures that you've probably seen before that capture a context of time, and we learn more about the time period just by looking at the picture, and we can recall that time period really well through pictures like these two. The second reason why pictures are important is that images are emotional, influential, and persuasive. So for this particular one, I have one picture, but this is inside the Situation Room at the White House. You can see at this time President Obama was the president, Vice President Biden, Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Anyway, during this time period, they are watching real time the capture and assassination of Osama bin Laden. So one of the things about photographers or presidents is there is a full-time presidential historian photographer who happens to be there just in case there are iconic moments like this one that need to be recorded for history purposes. And you can see from this picture, it certainly is an emotional type of it captures the emotion of the situation. The third reason why pictures are important is that the human brain is wired to process images quickly. So we can learn so much about the content and context of situation from a picture a lot faster than we can words from text. So here is an example of that. Of course, we can see that it is World War II, but it's the happy time. So even if you didn't know what VJ means, you can see the sailors are returning home, and they all have people have smiles on their faces in the background. So we can gather the end of the war rather than during the war. This famous photograph is taken by the second in command on one of the aircrafts that dropped the atomic bomb on Japan. This one was over Nagasaki. So just the perspective of above the clouds, seeing that mushroom come back up above the clouds from Earth, and just how they must have felt just by witnessing such a horrific scene above the clouds. The fourth reason we look at pictures, it says visual images communication can reach a wider audience. So we don't need to know foreign languages in order to understand images. So for example, this one, even if you don't know the story there, famous one, Ilian Gonzalez story, little boy with his mom came from Cuba. She died on a little lifeboat. He and a few other people the Coast Guard rescued. Anyway, long story short, they were trying to escape the communist country of Cuba, go live in Miami with some distant relatives. Here he's hiding with his relative, but the FBI has to come in and take him back. But the way the FBI went about that is horrific. It just happened that there was a reporter with a camera that happened to be in the family's home that day, these relatives talking to them about why they felt Ilian should stay here rather than be returned to his father back in Cuba, and captured that image that certainly shed a bad light on the FBI. This one is another example of how it crosses boundaries. So it doesn't really matter what country. Of course, he was an American, but the fact that man lands on the moon is a celebratory time for every person on the planet. Number 5 says visual communication has the potential to build a brand's name, identity, and build equity. If you look at this one, so it's crazy to think this picture was back in 1984 because that image has been on logos of so many polo shirts for almost 30 years. Here is another image. So this is an image that went back to the Black Panthers at the time, because in 1968, when these two track stars received the gold and the bronze, they did the salute of the Black Panther moment. And I think this is the last one, that images are processed by the brain up to 600,000 times or 60,000 times faster than text. So we can learn a lot in a much quicker way. Like this one, during Vietnam, part of the problem back here in the United States is for the first time ever, we saw the reporters go over there and show us scenes like this one to remind us of what our soldiers were involved in. And the Americans didn't like what they were seeing. Here's another one, this famous, we have no idea who actually took this famous picture, but you can see this little Jewish boy surrendering to the Nazis. And this famous photo from Tiananmen Square back in 1989, that this man recognized the power of one over the power of a mighty nation and actually forced the parade to stop for 15 minutes, even with tanks right in front of him. So those are some reasons why images are powerful. So now what I want us to do is learn ways that we can read images. So there are 3 strategies. Please record more of these in your academic notes. And because I'm trying to finish this on time, I'm just going to let you pause and copy this information on slides 26, 27, and 28 into your academic notes. I actually included a copy of page 27 for you to refer to, as this is an AP strategy in order to learn how to read text. So in class, I shared with everybody an example of reading text, and it was 3 paintings by John Williams Waterhouse, I think is his last name. And the paintings all deal with a part of Alfred Lord Tennyson's story of Camelot and Sir Lancelot. So this is just an excerpt from his really lengthy story. You can read that. But anyway, it reminds us that outside of Camelot, there were rivers that went around the island where Camelot was located. And people would have to cross bridges in order to get over to Camelot. And near the castle was also 4 dungeons. And inside of the dungeons was a woman who was sentenced to a crime. And her crime is to never look out the window. So here is one of the paintings where it shows that she is inside, knowing that she cannot look out the window. Please read some background to this picture so that you understand it. You can just put it into Wikipedia and it will explain it to you. This one he actually painted earlier, but it's second in the story, where she succumbs and looks out the window because Lancelot is out there. And this is the one where she is sentenced to death. She's on a boat. You can see the chains around her legs, or around her dress, tied to the boat, that she will eventually be going over a cliff. So read a little bit about each of these paintings of the Lady of Shalott, and use one of those strategies to practice reading it. Once you do that, you're going to find your own picture and use one of the strategies to analyze it. You can choose the optic, the content versus context, or the appeals. Great pictures are found in some of the resources that I put in this page. So you need to have the picture, along with your one-page response for Tuesday. Thank you.